Hi, everyone. This is Tatiana Dudiez. I am the show host for Thrive and Shine, which is a platform for authentic power and conscious leadership. It's all of that really means that we are hosting amazing leaders in this world who are embodying the change they want to see in the world and who are making a difference and an impact on a global level. And today I have an amazing guest I particularly value in the number of people I have around me who are making a huge difference in this world and contributing in such a meaningful way. So we have today Richard Barrett, who is the founder and chairman of the Barrett Values Centre. I'm going to have to put my glasses on to finish this. And so Richard is an author and speaker and internationally recognized thought leader on leadership and the evolution of human values in business and society. And of course, I love all of that stuff. This is so meaningful to me. Richard, thank you so much for contributing to this show, contributing to everything you do in this world. Welcome. What an applause, right? It does feel like you are in the audience with us, right? Richard, can you hear us? Oh, we have a little issue.
Okay, I don't have any issues.
Can you hear us now?
I can hear you. I've always heard you.
Okay. Good morning. How are you?
Very fantastic.
Very fantastic. Okay.
And it's good evening here.
That's right. You are in London presently, traveling the world to contribute in meaningful ways.
Yes, I was in Boston and Washington last week.
Fabulous.
Later this week, I'm in Barcelona. And then hopefully I'm not going anywhere until after Christmas, but let's wait and see.
Well, I think you love traveling, so this is all perfect and good and contributing in meaningful ways. As we were talking about chatting before we came on air, I was asking you how you made a difference and how did you contribute to the people you were with in Boston. And you said they had tears, so that means, I touched their heart in a meaningful way, which is so what I mean, not in a mean way, but it's so what I love to create as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
When words come out of your mouth and people tear up, you know something important is going on.
Exactly. Richard, I want to dig a little bit here with you, and I want to understand what brought you to this work. And first of all, explain the work where you're at today, if you don't mind, so that you give a much clearer explanation of what you do and who you are. And I would love to go back into the past a little bit, just enough so that we understand what brought you to this.
Well, I'll try and make this a short story.
Well,
I was like many other people. I was born at a young age, and I when I was 17, I thought, nobody in my family had ever been to university, and I had the opportunity, and I didn't know what to do, so I studied about it, and I thought, well, I'll become a transportation engineer, and I did that, and then I worked at that career for about 20 odd years, and then all of a sudden realized, having been very successful and very happy, that I was bored. Suddenly it occurred to me, and I realized that I was not fulfilling my potential, and maybe I should be focusing on something else. At that point, I got the intuition to write a book called A Guide to Liberating Your Soul. And I spent 2 or 3 years writing that. At that time, I was at the World Bank working as a transportation engineer. And it was funny because when I got that sense of boredom, or I look back, let me put it, when I was 17, I thought I heard my soul say transportation. Actually, it said transformation, because this was the rest of my life. And so
transportation is rather different than transformation.
Yeah, it's vertical. It's still transportation, but of a vertical scale of consciousness. You can look at it that way. Anyhow, so And very quickly thereafter, after 2 years of working on that book, I got another download, which was you have to write a book on organizational transformation and a further one on societal transformation. And so I finished the first book, started work on the second. I was still working at the World Bank, but then I invented a way of measuring consciousness by mapping values to the 7 levels of consciousness model, which is an extension of Maslow's hierarchy with much more detail around self-actualization. So this was a measurement tool, and I realized that this could be used in organizations, for individuals, and even in nations. And so I started a company in 1997. That's over 21 years ago. And now it's a global company. We work in 80 or 90 different countries. We worked with thousands of organizations, with thousands of leaders. And simply what it is we're mapping their values to a consciousness model. And that for the first 10 years of the company, I managed the company and I ran it. And then I began to realize that actually I wanted to go deeper and broader. So I started, somebody else ran the company, and I had time then to write books. And so at the moment, I'm writing a book every year and have been for the last 7 years. And some of these books, or many of them, are on personal transformation, what I call ego-soul dynamics, and also on evolutionary coaching, the values-driven organization, everything to do with evolution. My latest book, which is just coming out, is called The Evolutionary Human, How Darwin Got It Wrong. So that's my topic, basically. At the deep level, how do we live as souls? We don't have souls. Each of us is a soul.
Right.
How do you live from that place? And at the other end of the scale, how do we transform the consciousness of nations? So that's my playground.
The consciousness of nations. I love that. One of the things that I really appreciated when we had our last conversation, you were saying that it's not about the journey, it's about the destination, which I thought was brilliant, only because it goes against what everybody says in spirituality. And I take a strong stand towards spirituality being a tool and something that I value dearly, yet it in my opinion, can't define all that there is for us to know and use as tools, and it's not the end product of all, right? So explain that to me a little bit for our viewers. It's not because everybody says it's the journey. It's all about the journey. And you're like, no, it's about the destination.
Okay, so the journey is important, don't let me go wrong. However, when you only focus on the journey, you're missing the point. And spirituality is the journey. And there are many ways that you can come to spirituality, explore spirituality. You can do meditation, mindfulness, yoga, retreats. You can attend seminars from disembodied beings. Or you can that people channel. There's so many different things. And when you focus on spirituality, when you focus on the journey, which is useful in terms of the things that you learn, you're missing the point. Because the destination is the fact that you are a soul. You don't have a soul. You are an incarnated soul. And when you focus on that destination and connecting with your soul and befriending your soul and trusting your soul and becoming one with your soul, you then become an enlightened being. And that's the key. And the whole process of the journey is really all about how do I let go of my fears. And there are very many practical ways in spirituality that you can do that. But see, focusing on the journey alone is not sufficient to get you there. So people started focusing on, okay, here my goal is living in soul consciousness with soul awareness. Then the journey becomes much more meaningful.
Exactly. And I think it's such an important distinction to underline because it's not clearly identified out there. And I think too many people focus on simply the journey and that spirituality and all the ways that we are being in every day. And so if you were, for instance, to discuss this principle, the the journey, the destination, the soul, we are a soul versus we have a soul, to a novice, to someone who is really new to all of this, perhaps someone that you meet in an organization, in a corporate environment, that you are teaching a workshop to, and this person comes to you and go, I really don't understand what you're saying. What does that all mean? We are a soul. How would you explain this to a novice person?
Well, first of all, I'd say you don't have a soul. You are the soul. You are a soul. And so how do you explain to a novice? So I'd say, well, look, are you looking for well-being? Are you looking for fulfillment in your life? Because if you are, then you're aligning with your soul, because your soul incarnated into this body, which looks like a three-dimensional material object, but actually is, or a living being. It's actually an energetic, you're actually an energetic being. And so you need to live from the place of the soul. You need to focus on how to connect with your soul. And you can connect, and you can talk to your soul, and you can get responses. So then people say, oh my gosh, I don't know whether I can do that. Well, I say, try it, and then fake it till you make it, because actually it's actually quite easy, because the soul even knows the question that you're going to pose before you finish posing the question, because the soul is you. So there's the ego aspect of the soul, and don't get me wrong, the ego is not bad. It's the fears of the ego that we need to address. And as you let go of the fears of the ego, then you open yourself up to the energetic energy of love of the soul. And once you're living in soul consciousness, you have no needs, because the soul takes over your life. Now that sounds, oh my God, I don't want to be taken over. I tell you, you do, because you live the most amazing life, and you're full of joy and your connection. So the soul really incarnates for three reasons. The ego views these three reasons through its own lens. So many people say, well, I'm looking for meaning and purpose in my life. Well, sure you are, but what does that mean? For the soul, that is self-expression. So you don't have to worry about meaning and purpose as long as you're able to express what is in your heart and what you're passionate about. So the second thing that ego gets attached to is making a difference. We're all attached to making a difference. But from the soul perspective, that's all about connection. Because if you can't connect with people, how are you going to make a difference?
True.
So then comes the last point, which is service. And for the soul is not interested in service. The soul is interested in contribution. What contribution can I make? Now, it may be large, it may be small, but it's just, what is your contribution? So from the soul perspective, this is what I mean when you say recognize that you are a soul. It changes everything, because now you're focused on self-expression, connection, and contribution. And the more that you can do these three things, the more you can live in soul awareness, and the more you can let go of your fears, the more you can live in soul awareness. So that's my elevator speech.
Pitch.
I know it's more than 2 sentences, but it was not more than 50.
Well, I certainly do not want to limit you to 2 sentences. That's not my style. We are here
No,
to
I know.
exchange and go deeper. And so I have a feeling that actually way more people live in their soul more than they know. Because, right? So here's an example. I'm having these conversations these days with a beautiful man in my life, and so he doesn't come as much from a spiritual perspective, and of course, or soulful perspective, and brilliant businessman, and so we have these yummy conversations because I love the fact that he's so open to understand and go deeper, and so it's all new, and yet I see for him, and yet I see that in fact he's likely being in his soul way more than he believes, and I think that is the generality for a lot of people. They just can't identify it really. So for instance, that little voice we refer to in within ourselves, is that the way that the soul talks to us, in your opinion? That insight, that intuition, that response that we have from within as that little voice that we identify. Is that how you
Yes,
could...
it is.
Yeah.
I call it the inspiration, actually, and it can come in the voice, or it can come in as a approach, values approach to living. Now, this sort of person you're describing, I come across them too, and
Right.
they've not been involved in spirituality, but they're just good people
Oh,
who
yes.
are operating from this deeper sense of awareness and consciousness without really knowing about it. So
Correct.
they don't have to be taught, these people. And so they show up as they are. Now, if they want to move from well-being to flourishing, then living in the shift into soul awareness can be explained in a very scientific manner. You don't need to go to the woo-woo of spirituality to get to the idea of soul awareness. I teach a 4-day workshop on from well-being to flourishing, living in soul consciousness, although I'm thinking of changing the title to living in your soul destiny. But however, that's not the point. The point is that there is a very logical explanation to who you are and what life is about, if you're willing to accept that we live in a multidimensional reality. And Einstein was quite willing to accept that. And that, in fact, our three-dimensional material world that we live in is not a property of the world, it's a property of our senses. In other words, our senses are very limited. And actually, we live in a much larger energetic world, which is well known to quantum scientists. We live in that much larger energetic world, but it's as if our senses can only focus on the three-dimensional material part of that larger holistic experience. So you can approach this whole topic not from a spiritual perspective, but from a scientific perspective, if you like. And that's what I do, because it's and if you find somebody who's willing to listen, then they get it, because it's like all backed up by scientific ideas, some of which have been known for some time, some of which are ignored by a lot of scientists, like the fact that the world is an energetic continuum. Although it is, it is been well known for 100 years. So yes, so I don't, for somebody in the spiritual vein who wants to find fulfillment, then shifting into soul awareness is the way to go. For somebody who is not in the spiritual vein, but is already living a good life, then I would say, well, to them, do you want to move from well-being to flourishing? Because I can tell you how to do that.
Fascinating. And so now, can we go into a little bit more of the scientific side of this? Because that fascinates me. And I think it's also another side of consciousness that most people do not even know exists to a certain extent, right?
Sure.
And so
we can go into that.
So what would be the basics in terms of science that can prove to some of our audience and some people that you talk with in those workshops and in your conferences? How do you approach it on a scientific level?
Well, I'll give you some anecdotes. This is all explained in the book, A New Psychology of Human Well-Being, the influence of ego-soul dynamics on mental and physical health. So now you're getting a drift of where I'm going with this. So I'm going to just tell you about some things, and then to capture the attention of let's say, a non-believer or somebody who is coming from a scientific background. Okay, I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about the placebo effect, and I'm going to talk about alter egos. Okay, are both well known and well proven. So many people have heard about the placebo effect, and basically, the effect is that you are given a pill, which the doctor says, well, this should cure you. and they take the pill, but it's actually just a sugar pill, and they get better. And this has been known since 1950s, and a lot of research has been done. In fact, even at Harvard University, there's even a department which is focusing on the placebo effect. But now, so people, so I'll give you two anecdotes from that. One, in the last few years, they did a experiment where with people who had this irritable bowel syndrome, and so they gave people they split people into two groups. One, they gave them some sort of pill that might help them, and the other people got the placebo effect. Okay, so normally they don't tell the people what pill they've got. Well, what they did was they actually told the people who got the placebo pill that they got the placebo pill, and guess what? They got better. I mean, that's one. I mean, how do you account for that? It's the power of, I don't know. I mean, it's unbelievable, but it's true. So, but this other point on the placebo I find fascinating is that there are certain people have knee problems, then it's usually the same problem, and it requires surgery. And so they got a bunch of people who had the same knee problem. I don't know, maybe 30 or 40, maybe more. And they split them into three groups. On one group, they did a certain surgery. On another, they did a different surgery. And on the third group, they went as if they were going into surgery. They anesthetized them. They were knocked out. They put an incision on their knee, and then they sewed it up. They didn't do anything else.
Okay.
And all of those people, all the three groups got better. And 3 or 4 years later, they were still better.
Oh my God. That's unbelievable. Yeah. That's crazy.
This is proven. So, okay, so that's one story.
Right.
Two sets about placebo.
Placebo effect, right.
This is the power of the mind, the energetic mind over the physical body, okay?
Correct.
So let me go to the alter ego. So alter egos are quite well known. We build up an alter ego usually between the age of 2 and 8 during the second stage of psychological development, when the emotional mind is dominant and growing. And so when children are abused at this age, they get to the point where the lack of love and attention, or the abuse, becomes so painful that they have to separate themselves from it by creating an alter ego. And some people have many alter egos. And that allows them, whenever this, let's say, sexual abuse. Okay? So whenever this sexual abuse is going to happen, they're able to disassociate from their feelings and move into this alter ego so that it's less painful. Okay. Now, alter egos can show up in our adult life. They can be triggered by various things.
Right.
And so when an alter ego shows up, the body has specific physical symptoms. So an alter ego can suffer from diabetes. When the full ego shows up, not the alter, that person doesn't have diabetes. And to the point that there are, and I've seen this, it was on a YouTube video, and this lady who when her alter ego shows up, she's blind. And when she's not in the alter ego, she's not blind.
Wow.
So
that is, so she literally is, so she, then at that point, if I were her, I would want to live in my alter ego all the time, but then it's associated with pain, yet there is a way out of pain through being able to see. This is so fascinating.
Okay, so look, when she's alter ego show up, she's blind. So
when she's the alter ego, she's blind. Okay, I understood the
normal ego, she's not blind. So,
okay,
but she can't control when she goes into the alter ego and when she's not, because these certain events trigger the alter ego coming in. So, I mean, all of this stuff is documented. So so the mind has an amazing ability to actually influence what's going on in the body. So by this time, I've probably got somebody's attention when I say that, and they say, well, how does that work? Well, I say, how it works is like this. And I'm going to bring in now to the conversation an Eastern tradition, which is basically the chakra system. These are the energy centers of the body, and they've been known in China and the Far East for thousands of years. And Chinese medicine is absolutely built around the chakra system. Okay, so now here's the interesting thing: the link to the mind is that when you go through the stages of psychological development, there are 7 stages that I set out. If you actually have difficulty mastering a particular stage, it creates an energetic disequilibrium in the body at the chakra level, which corresponds to the 7 stages of development. There are 7 chakras, there are 7 stages of development, or a link between particular chakras. There are links. So, for example, I studied the leading causes of death, and I linked them to the stages of development. And I began to realize, this was an experiment that I did 2 or 3 years ago before I wrote my book, A New Psychology of Human Wellbeing. One of the danger periods for women is the self-actualizing stage, which is 40s. In the self-actualizing stage, you begin to look for meaning and purpose. And as I said, for the soul, that's self-expression. Now, a woman in her 40s, or most women in their 40s, have a husband who has certain needs. They have children who have needs, and maybe they even have aging parents who have needs. So who is the last person that they serve? Is themselves. And so they are not able, or they find it very difficult they deny their self-expression. And that's in the 40s. Towards the end of the 40s, in the early 50s, breast cancer. And it's directly linked to that stage of development. And it's I believe is directly linked to the self-expression of the soul, because the soul incarnated in your body in order to live a life and to give its gifts. And if you are not able to give those gifts, you create an energetic disequilibrium in the body. And at the 5th chakra, which is the throat, the mouth, and the upper chest, if you are not able to express yourself, then breast cancer results. Now, for men, it's really the next stage, because after the self-actualization stage in the 40s comes the 50s, and for men, that's the integrating stage. This is the making a difference stage, and this is about connection, as I already explained. So if you can't connect with people, you can't make a difference, and if you can't make a difference, then you deny you make it difficult to be successful at this stage of development. Now, men, when they were boys, at the 2nd stage of development, the limbic mind brain, the emotional mind, from 2 to 8, are told, be strong, don't show your feeling. In other words, they close down on the aspect of who they are, which allows them to connect, because they can't connect to their feelings. So when it comes to the 50s, what happens is that they don't know how to connect. They don't have the emotional intelligence. And interestingly, as I just explained, there's a link between that 6th stage of development and the 2nd stage, which is when they're boys in 2 to 8. And what happens to those men in the late 50s and early 60s, they have prostate cancer. And I've tested these theories on various people that I've come across, who've read the book, and they've said, my God, that is just so correct. That is exactly what happened to me. And so in the book, I actually link all 7 stages to all different types of disease. And I did that in the book, I could have written a whole book about it, but I haven't done all the research, but I did enough to be able to say, this makes a lot of sense. That if you fail to master a particular stage of development, it eventually shows up either as a mental disorder or as a physical disorder, because you're blocking an energetic development, the ego-soul dynamic, and that energy is in your body, and eventually that energy imbalance creates difficulties for the body to function.
It makes perfect sense. And I love that you're showing this in a scientific fashion. By the way, do you see me yet or not?
No, but I'm having a lovely conversation with somebody out in the outer space. I don't know where you are.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
We can see you though on the screen, so we are providing our viewers
Good.
with a wonderful experience. And so,
Thank you.
but
Thank
just
you.
going back to this, it's fascinating because I've actually witnessed around me, the women who have who develop breast cancer. I developed actually a thyroid condition, which I think was a minor,
Exactly.
right? A minor, and it developed early on into my 40s, which coincided with the start of my last business. And from then on, that business actually was my self-expression, and it was my way to fly and to really go within, to know who I am on a deeper level. What are my skills? What's my potential? Like I had not come as close to all of that within myself as I did in my 40s through my company. So I believe that I was actually saved by this opportunity to develop this company, because it was me becoming a butterfly and really getting to know how to express myself. But it
Right.
did develop, and I still have the condition today to a certain extent. Maybe it will stop as much as I do maybe more shows, as I express myself even
Yeah,
more.
yeah. Maybe there's another form of expression. So it's interesting you mentioned the thyroid, because
Yes.
I was visiting my doctor, I don't know, and it was a lady, and I was explaining my theory to her because I thought, here's a chance to test it out. So I was
Right.
talking about this fifth chakra being the upper part of the chest, and she said, wow, she said, that's interesting, because I have a lot of ladies, in a lot of women in their 40s who come in with thyroid problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, well, there you go. That's the fifth chakra area. And she said, wow, I'm going to think about that. So, you're our case in point. So
And
anyhow, I think we just need to pay more attention to who we are, and who we are is we are these energetic beings.
mm-hmm.
And actually, the way to connect with your soul, I didn't say this earlier. I said, connect, befriend, trust,
Mm-hmm.
become one.
Mm-hmm.
But the way you connect with the soul is through your feelings, because the feelings are actually start with the emotion, and the emotion begins with the ego soul dynamic. So if your ego and your soul are not in energetic alignment, that's what emotion is. It's energy in motion. And the
Mm.
emotion then comes through as a feeling. You cognitively get it as a feeling because you imprint your belief over the emotion, and then you get a feeling. So there are only seven or eight
Interesting.
emotions, but in fact there are literally hundreds of feelings. Why? Because the emotion with the imprint of your belief becomes the feeling. And so so the feeling is actually, but if you follow the feeling back, you get to the point where
Mm.
the pain, the mental pain, is caring, and that's in the ego soul dynamic and a difference of um, energy. So I always say this: pain is positive because
Mm-hmm.
it's pointing right at what you need to work on. I
Exactly.
mean,
Yes.
physical pain or mental pain is the same thing, or emotional pain. If you've got pain in your knee, well, you start to think about your knee, and get something done about it. So if you have emotional pain, well, that's a sign. It's like, oh, wow, okay, here's some guidance. I've got this energetic imbalance
Mm-hmm.
at that mental level, and it has to do with the stages of development. And what is it? What is it that is holding me back? Well, what holding you back are the beliefs that you learned during the first three stages of development before the age of 24, when your reptilian mind brain, your limbic mind brain, and your neocortex were all growing and developing really fast because you were learning through your experiences. And so the experiences you have during the first 24 years of your life set you up for the rest of your life. Pretty much dictate how many times you go to a psychotherapist, or whether you get a sense of well-being, or what diseases you get, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's actually all comes back to the first 24 years of your life. And this is why it's vitally important for us to understand that and change
Mm-hmm.
our education system, and also improve parenting.
Oh my
Next
God,
year,
improved parenting, yes. And I mean, the education system for sure. Parenting is even more important, in my opinion, because this is the direct way that any one can take responsibility to have a major impact on their children. And this is on a daily basis. You can make that impact. So, and also, I think the medical system has a huge responsibility to shift into a new level of awareness and understanding of all of this, because it's still operating from a proof-based type of system, and it has to be proven on and on ad nauseum through studies, which I understand. And I also believe that if they were to practice it as their basis for study, then it would show up in their practice even more. Doctors could actually witness the direct impact of this type of approach.
They're not willing to go into the anomalies and question, because actually, if they did, they would be denying their education.
Correct.
The people in the universities would, I mean, in the universities, it's all peer review. And so if you come up with the idea that actually the ego-soul dynamic affects your health, and you publish something on that, because the majority of other academics don't agree, then you're heading out of the university system, because the peer review process in the academic world is actually debilitating and preventing us from moving forward.
Totally agree.
So going back to this parenting thing, the next book I write, and I'm going to start actually thinking about, I've started thinking about it, but it'll come out probably towards the end of next year. Well, the title is Parenting the Soul of Your Child.
I love that. I can't wait for that book. We're going to have many more shows.
Well, that's up to you. But anyhow, I mentioned this when I was giving a 3.5-hour workshop in Washington last week, and some of the ladies in the groups, that's all they wanted to talk about. I said, look, you came here for organizational and leadership transformation. Let's talk about that some other time. But they said, we want the book now. We want the book now. I said, okay, well, anyhow, I'll put it on the fast track.
Right.
And so my wife and my wife is a clinical psychologist. I asked her if she would help me with this book, and she said she would. And we're going to take some time off in early January to begin the process of research, because I get a lot of downloads from my soul about what to write about and what to put in, but then I still have to do all the research to make the links through to what other people are doing. So anyhow, we'll get done by the end of next year.
That's fascinating. I can't wait to know more about this. And also, we have maybe 2 minutes left. And so
wow,
I know it when I don't know it. This is every time I have this show, there is never enough time. So one of the things I want to say about this approach to parenting the soul of your child is one would need to know how to parent themselves to begin with. I know this is a completely different level and another conversation, but this is part of the responsibility, the self-responsibility that matters in this world. And this is partly why I do this show, because I'm so passionate about it. Just a couple of questions. What would be the one word that you would choose to describe yourself?
Well, I have a sentence. I'm a soul having a human experience. I am a soul. I don't have a soul. I live from soul consciousness. I have no needs, because my soul actually creates everything I need before I even know I have it. So I'm sorry, I rambled on, and that's more than one word.
Okay, so last question. What can't you go without during the day? Like every day you would need or want. And I know you said, I don't need anything and I don't want anything, but that's particularly why I'm asking the question. What can't you go without?
Connection to my soul, because it drives my whole being.
Right. Richard, it's such a pleasure. We could continue, and we will. I think we'll have to go back into more conversations because it's so delicious to go to this level. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to show, you can't see, but I'm going to show this one book, Evolutionary Coaching, which I love. Another one is the new leadership paradigm, all of these concepts and practices to for corporations to evolve into a different level of consciousness. I love that. And the new one you are saying is, again, please remind us of the title.
Well, my most popular book is What My Soul Told Me, which is the evolutionary coaching book for non-professionals, basically.
Correct.
And it's funny, there is a lady I know who says she sleeps with it under her pillow. And just before we came onto this show, I was talking to her and some other people on Zoom.
Okay.
And I said, you know, I often tell people that you do that. And she said, you know what? I'm going to provide a photograph of me putting that book under my pillow, and you can put it on Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you want. I said, brilliant.
Brilliant. Love it. Let's then leave each other on that note. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Much love to you. And thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for being who you are. I love it. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.